Hello, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
This Monday's headlines in the southeast. A new war on drugs as the government says it's determined to stamp the trade out. Local reaction tonight.
The care home closed with just hours' notice in Sittingbourne, leaving families upset and residents in turmoil.
Our son is in pieces and we're having to gradually piece him back together again.
And Storm Barra is undergoing explosive cyclogenesis. Find out what that means for us later in the programme.
Good evening to you. The government have revealed their latest policy for tackling the use of illegal drugs. It's a combination, if you like, of carrot and stick. More rehabilitation courses for those who become addicted and tougher penalties for dealers and so-called lifestyle drug users.
Well, among the headlines generated by today's initiative, plans for those who dabble in drugs, including seizure of driving licence and passports. Police authorities and drug support services in Kent and Sussex have cautiously welcomed today's plans. Well, Charlotte Wilkins has more.
Today, the Prime Minister promised to come down hard on dealers and users, cracking down on county lines operations. Drug supply networks, which often exploit young and vulnerable people, is one of the key target areas.
We were looking at over 80 county lines drug gangs being operational in this county a couple of years ago. We got that down to 40, and I think that represents some remarkable progress. There is obviously still some more to do to make sure that gangs don't pop up in those vacancies which are being created when the line is shut down. But I think we are making some really, really good progress.
We work with young people. We've been trying to rehabilitate young people away from county lines, and I'm really glad that the focus is coming away from children criminalised and to the actual person that's demanding the drugs. We've got young people that we're trying to get into employment, and they're going into jobs and they're actually telling us there's more cocaine in those jobs and in those offices than they were on the streets when they were doing county lines. How is that helping?
The government says it wants to clamp down on so-called lifestyle drug users, issuing tougher penalties, things like taking away passports or driver's licences. But will it really make a difference?
No, not at all.
Yeah, in some cases, but then with younger people, I don't really think so.
People will, be more discreet about the way they do it, but I don't think it probably won't stop them doing it.
The plan also includes investment in recovery, with the hope of ending the cycle of addiction and repeat offending. While the funding announcement is welcomed by the Oasis project in Brighton, a service for women and families going through addiction, they want money to be spent on specialist services.
We know that women are outnumbered sort of 3 to 1 in mainstream treatment services. And I think nationally, women have disproportionately been affected by drug-related deaths. We feel it's really important to have gender-responsive care, women-specific spaces that really promote sort of drawing strength from each other, reducing shame and sort of supporting each other through that journey.
Meanwhile, critics say this war on drugs message is tired and isn't working. They want to see a more progressive approach. Charlotte Wilkins, ITV News, Brighton.
Well, the government is tonight outlining the details of its plan at Westminster. So live to our political correspondent Phil Hornby. Phil, what's been the reaction there?
Well, as you say, the government are just telling the House of Commons about their plans in detail, but Labour already said that the situation is so bad now because of government cuts over the last 10 years. There's no doubt the government are going to spend a lot more new money now, as we've heard, on rehabilitation and on cracking down, particularly on the county lines, drugs. People, we've got used, haven't we, to those pictures of early morning police drugs raids. Well, there'll be more where that came from over the next few months. And as we've heard, the government have also got a message for perhaps middle-class people who think nothing of snorting cocaine at a dinner party. The message is, we are coming for you too. The minister in charge of this campaign was speaking just a day after a Sunday paper claimed it had found evidence of drug taking in the building behind me.
Well, obviously, there's about 5,000 people that work in the Houses of Parliament. We've got 3 million, we think, estimated drug users across the whole of the UK, and the people who work in Parliament are a reflection of that group. So you wouldn't be surprised if there were some. What we want to do is get to a system wherever they work, whether it's in Westminster or even here at Millbank with ITV, that people recognise the part they're playing in this criminality by their thoughtless drug usage and stop it.
Not guilty, Your Honour. Here's what the Labour leader had to say today.
There's no doubt that the drug problem has got a lot worse in the last 10 years, particularly issues like drug-related deaths and the county lines, which are destroying lives. And the question for the government is not just over the plans today, but the money that they've taken out of the system. Millions and millions of pounds have been taken out of the system over the years, and that has caused a lot of the problems.
Not a word today from either of the main parties about the possibility of legalising or decriminalising some drugs, and that is happening with cannabis in some European countries, some states in America and in Canada, but not here.
We'll see what happens. Phil Hornby at Westminster, as always, thank you.
And of course, you can find more on today's top stories on our website. Just go to itv.com/Meridian.
In other news, a sixth suspect has been arrested following a man's death in Tunbridge Wells. The victim was found on Cayley Road in the early hours of Saturday morning. A man from Essex was arrested early today. 4 more people from Essex were arrested over the weekend on suspicion of murder and remain in custody. Well, a woman was also arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender, but has now been bailed.
Police searches are continuing for a 6th day across Kent and Sussex after a mother of 2 from Sissinghurst went missing. Alexandra Morgan was last seen more than 3 weeks ago and hasn't made any contact with her family. Mark Brown, who's 40 and from Squirrel Close in St Leonards-on-Sea, has been charged with murder.
A Sussex charity has launched its Christmas appeal to help rough sleepers. The Brighton Housing Trust says it helped almost 750 people get off the streets last year and prevented another 450 from becoming homeless. However, it says more needs to be done following the fallout of the pandemic.
2 families in Kent say they were given just 5 hours' notice that the residential home where their vulnerable adult children lived in Sittingbourne was being closed down.
Achieve Together, that ran the site, has apologised and says a thorough investigation is underway. As Joe Caution reports, the families want urgent changes to prevent similar closures.
They literally gave these very, very vulnerable people that they say they care about a few hours to be thrown out on the streets.
He thought he'd done something wrong, and waking up that first morning with strangers must have been awful.
Both Michael and Lawrence require specialist around-the-clock support. But last month, their families were told their care home Berkeley House in Sittingbourne was being permanently closed down.
12:10, 12:15 that day, we finally got a message, it's closing at 5 today. We could understand if there'd been a fire or a flood or a rat infestation or something. This was a decision by Achieve Together to cut and run. You couldn't evict other people from their accommodation in such short time.
Achieve Together are absolutely not fit to do it. And our son is in pieces, and we're having to gradually piece him back together again.
Following an inspection, Achieve Together say the CQC and local authority partners determined people's needs would be better met in alternative provision. So immediate action was taken to instigate this, which included finding suitable new placements for every single person. However, the CQC told us that it is not the CQC's role to determine where people receive their care. And ITV News Meridian understands inspectors asked Achieve Together to make urgent improvements, but it was the provider's decision to immediately shut the entire site.
I think it's disgraceful. Absolutely.
Jane worked there before the closure. She believes the decision was made to save money. We're not using her real name.
It got to the point where there was one weekend that we'd been asking all week for money and hadn't been given any. We had a few people who wore incontinence pads and we couldn't get any because none of them had any money. We had to call a relative of a staff member who stopped them to get some. We were constantly putting our hands in our own pockets to buy basics like bread and milk because we had no money in the petty cash. All we wanted was the best for them, but we couldn't give them the best because of the facilities we were given.
A spokesperson for Achieve Together told us the provision delivered at Berkeley House fell way below the high standards that the people we support rightly expect and deserve, and that we know we can provide. We wholeheartedly apologise for this. We completely recognise the distress and concern the speed and nature of this closure caused for the people and families involved, and the impact it has subsequently had. They say a thorough investigation is already underway so that lessons can be learnt. But Lawrence's parents, Paul and Kathy, believe their actions should stop them from working in the sector ever again.
What's different here is that this is actually the senior management from board level. This is Achieve Together. This is a company that's the third largest care provider in the UK, and they've completely failed the people that they're supposed to be serving.
To me, that just means they should not be doing what they're doing. They should get out of that business. They've no right to actually be with our families who need help.
Berkeley House is now just an empty building. It's locked up, and while there's no sign of life here now, the impacts are still being felt by some of the most vulnerable people in society. Some who are asking whether they had to move out because they'd done something wrong. But it wasn't their fault, yet they will never be truly able to understand or be given an answer as to why their homes were taken from them so suddenly. Joe Caution, ITV News, Sittingbourne.
2 policemen who shared pictures of murder victims on WhatsApp and made derogatory comments have been jailed. PC Denez Jaffa, seen here, and PC Jamie Lewis were sent to secure a crime scene after the bodies of Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were found in a park in London. Their mother, Mina Smallman from Ramsgate, welcomed the 2-year, 9-month sentence. She said the police officers had dehumanised her daughters.
Because of the sentencing, we are part of the change that's going to come in the culture of the police force. And I'll say it again, most of our police force are amazing and do amazing jobs. But there is an element that has taken over the culture of how they banter.
There is cause for cautious optimism in the race to plug the HGV driver shortage, according to a new report. Logistics UK, based in Tunbridge Wells, says significant steps have been taken, and they include the government and industry working together to increase capacity to test new drivers and provide new training schemes, along with committing to improving facilities for drivers.
Councillors are hoping to restart loan repayments from the I360 attraction in Brighton early next year. It's thought the viewing tower made losses of more than £5 million last year. It owes the council more than £40 million. But councillors believe a restructured plan will help them support it, as well as recoup their investment.
Well, the latest fostering figures have been described as a bleak picture by Ofsted's Director for Social Care.
Despite there being more foster homes than ever before, the number of children going into care has also increased at a significantly higher rate.
Well, now foster carers in our region are urging more people to come forward to offer a safe and loving home for children who are in desperate need, as Amrit Birdie reports.
Joe and Joe West are foster carers living in Eastbourne, East Sussex. They're one of a record 45,000 fostering households in England. But it's not enough to keep up with the growing number of children needing foster homes.
I think with the pandemic, the crisis, it's caused a lot of issues for families, and there's a lot of families in crisis, and there's a lot of children that need additional support. But there's a problem because there's not enough foster carers. So there's children that need help now, and foster people need to step up and inquire about fostering.
I mean, I just know from speaking to our manager that they're in desperate need for more carers.
The most recent figures from Ofsted show there was the highest ever number of inquiries into fostering last year, but only a fraction resulted in applications.
I think for some of the people, the time isn't right for them. We need foster carers of all ages, of all ethnicities, from all parts of the country, so that we can give the right care close to where children come from, so they can maintain those links with their schools and with their extended family.
Elaine and her husband Anthony foster 2 teenagers, the age group desperately in need of more foster carers. They say there are some myths to bust when it comes to looking after teens.
Having teenagers, the benefits are they're much more self-sufficient and they're quite more independent. And I think it's quite rewarding for when they get to that age to realise there's a support infrastructure for them.
I think it's also important to remember that a teenager is in care for exactly the same reason why a baby is in care. It's not their fault. And it's wonderful to see a teenager being able to excel and do things that they maybe didn't think they could do.
Teenagers, like any children, when they come into care, they've usually experienced some trauma, some abuse and neglect, and they really need the same care as other children. We need to raise more awareness of fostering on a national level. For example, to recruit teachers and nurses, the government have been very active in recruiting, and this is a very similar vocation like teaching or nursing, and we need to have a greater awareness amongst the general public of fostering.
The government say they are encouraging more people to come forward to provide homes for vulnerable children, and additional funding has been made available in response to changing pressures on children's services. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
And if you're a foster carer watching this programme, I think you're marvellous. Well, the ITV Evening News Hour continues with the national and the international news at 6:30. To London now for a preview, and Mary Nightingale.
Coming up, the race against Omicron, more jabs into more arms as scientists warn the variant will be dominant within weeks. An inquiry is launched into the murder of Arthur Lavinia Hughes, but after previous failures, will lessons really be learnt this time? And a student from Hampshire on her miraculous escape from the jaws of a crocodile. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
We will, Mary. Thank you very much indeed. Now, if, like me, you like those old-fashioned phone boxes, some good news, because roughly 5,000 public phone boxes could be saved under rule changes proposed by the telecoms regulator Ofcom. They want the boxes protected if they meet certain criteria, like being in accident hotspots or areas not covered by mobile phone networks.
Yes, but despite their general decline in use, phone boxes are still widely used for calls to the emergency services, as well as organisations like Childline and Samaritans. Kevin Ashford has our report.
Public payphones used to be a common sight, but with widespread mobile phone ownership, the use of phone boxes to make calls has plummeted in recent years. It's estimated there are now just 21,000 working payphones around the country. However, they can still play a vital role. The head of services in the South East for the charity Childline says payphones can be crucial for those trying to get help.
Although we can pretty much assume that most people have access to a mobile phone, what we do know is that 150,000 calls were made in 1 year from telephone boxes to emergency services, and 25,000 of those were to Childline. Now, we can't have any barriers to children and young people seeking support when they're in trouble or danger, and we can't assume that they always have access to a mobile phone.
In recent years, many payphones have been taken out of service, like this one at Whitstable in Kent. Some have been adopted by local communities and used for other purposes. Ofcom has proposed new rules which it says would protect around 5,000 of the surviving payphones from closure.
The criteria we're consulting on are where there is poor mobile signal, where it's an accident hotspot, so where the payphone is actually regularly used. So that's also another good indicator for us. We have got payphones out there at the moment that haven't been used at all in the last 12 months or 24 months. And it's difficult in those circumstances to say the payphone is still needed.
So whether you consider them an essential lifeline or an outdated way of communicating, there's no denying that the number of phone boxes is declining. What's replacing them are these, street hubs.
So I won't make a 999 call, obviously, but you could if you wanted.
Here you can make free UK calls, connect to high-speed Wi-Fi and even charge your phone, while the unit monitors air quality.
Is there a demand for payphones still?
Yes, certainly in some locations there is, particularly more rural areas where they're needed by local communities. And as BT, we take that commitment seriously and keep payphones. But in some areas, particularly urban areas, there's less need for those because connectivity is better. And there's also more need for the benefits we are bringing with this, with enhanced coverage of Wi-Fi, digital street communication and the environmental benefits they bring.
300 of these street hubs will be installed around the country, the latest manifestation of the phone box. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Now, back in 1994, the world was introduced to Riverdance as an interval act during the Eurovision Song Contest. The 7 minutes of dancing that followed was to transform entertainment and go on to break records all over the globe.
Well, now the show is on a world tour to celebrate 25 years since that epic moment, and the dancers are about to come to Brighton. Heather Edwards went to watch some rehearsals.
From Mongolia to Alaska to Dubai, Riverdance is loved the world over. The dancers are now here in the UK. Now, most of the dancers here today weren't even born when Riverdance burst onto our TV screens during the 1994 Eurovision Song Contest in Ireland. The principal dancer, Bobby Hodges, however, does remember watching as a 6-year-old boy at his granddad's house.
I can just remember being completely mesmerised, and I think the whole, especially of the UK and Ireland, everyone's jewels were just on the floor, and I don't know if it was the power of Bill Williams' music is so stirring, the impact of 35 people dancing perfectly in unison, or the rhythm of Irish dance, or the fact it was just so unusual. I think when you combined all of that, I think that's what makes it so powerful.
I entered a world, I entered a family who loved Riverdance. I had the videotape, I had Mum and Dad's wedding video, I had Riverdance, and I just watched it over and over and over again. And my parents played the music for me, and I was mesmerised by the Grammy Award-winning music by Bill Whelan. So that's why I'm an Irish dancer, because of Riverdance.
So what does it take to become a world-class Irish dancer good enough to take to the stage for Riverdance? The answer is decades of practice, fast feet and incredible endurance.
It takes years of competition work, training really, really hard to be the best Irish dancer you can possibly be. And then when you get into Riverdance, it's learning to be that kind of Riverdance-esque Irish dancer. That's the next step. And again, it takes a lot of work. And we rehearse every single day. And our motto is every night is opening night.
Now, Riverdance, we really are a lot more educated about what we need to do to be able to perform at the highest level 8 times a week, and it is. I mean, it's tough, but the myth of the ice buckets is not fake. We do get into the ice buckets after the show for recovery.
Now, of course, it's the Riverdance 25th anniversary tour, but it should have happened last year, but had to get postponed because of COVID. This dance is very special, and it's still wowing crowds all over the world, everywhere from China to America and back here to the UK.
I think Riverdance is so unique and special. There's no show out there like it, and it's an experience that people come back for time and time again.
The dancers will be performing in Brighton and London before Christmas. The magic from all those years ago brought back to the stage for the next generation to enjoy. Heather Edwards, ITV News.
Oh, they're fantastic.
They are
I
good,
give
aren't they?
anything to dance like that. I've got the body, I just haven't got the feet.
Oh, well, that could be a problem. You might trip over all the time,
It's a big problem, yes.
But then after singing on Friday with Tony Hadley, maybe we should do a little bit of,
Let's go for it.
It's just my knees.
You ready?
Just my knees, unfortunately. Just couldn't really. Holly, thankfully, has joined us now. And Holly, I have to say, it was a beautiful, beautiful sunrise this morning. I remember when I was at primary school in Kent, I got a gold star, my only one, for having known the saying that it was red sky at night, shepherd's delight, red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning.
Never
because
fails.
that's what it was. It was absolutely beautiful, but things went downhill.
Yes, and there is some truth in that saying. It's not just one of those old wives' tales. The idea being that if you get a weather front approaching, it throws high-level cloud ahead of it. And you need a bit of high-level cloud for a really nice sunrise. So yes, that's what we had this morning. Let's take a look at a quick few photos. This first one is a stunner. Take a look at this.
That's beautiful.
David Connor in Cuden. Just those colours are amazing, aren't they? We've got this lovely one from Helen McCrowell at Ching Hill. Lovely bit of mist there in the valley as well. Beautiful colours from Wendy Wall, and finally Valerie Corder shared this one in Sheerness.
That's really
well done, Valerie. What a photograph.
But then, yes, of course, the weather all went downhill.
You were talking about something called, and I quote, explosive cyclogenesis. It sounds scary. Hopefully it's not. What does it mean?
I suppose it is a bit scary in a way. It's what the Americans sometimes call a weather bomb, and that's what is happening at the moment.
Weather bomb?
A weather bomb, I know.
Scary.
We tend not to in the UK. We stick to explosive cyclogenesis. Bit of a mouthful. Let's take a look at what Storm Barrett's doing, because at the moment it might not look all that impressive, but look at the way we see all of these extra isobars filling the map. It basically means it's very, very quickly deepening, and so it's becoming very quickly a very powerful low, and it's arriving for tomorrow. So we have got weather warnings in force, we've got a warning for wind in force, so it is enough for some disruption.
Slight damage, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe some slight damage, some big waves into the coast as well. Actually, that's going to be a factor we need to watch out for.
All right, here she is, Holly, with your full forecast.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Temperatures plummeting away tonight, a widespread frost, and then yes, tomorrow Storm Barra, bringing the risk of gusts up to 50 or 60 miles an hour, especially in the most exposed locations. In fact, we could even see a bit more than that. Large waves around as well, and around high tide, the risk even of some coastal overtopping. So out there at the moment, well, actually quite quiet, clear skies, temperatures falling away, and yes, a widespread frost. The risk of some icy stretches where you've got any wet surfaces from today's rainfall. Locally, we could see -4 or -5 degrees, and maybe a few mist and fog patches to start tomorrow morning. So a cold, bright, frosty start. Then we see these changes, thickening cloud. The winds pick up, outbreaks of rain spilling in, and as I say, this risk of gusts up to around 50 or 60 miles an hour. If we zoom out then to look at the bigger picture, you can see all of that rain rattling across us. As it clears, a number of heavy showers follow on behind, and you can still see a real squeeze in the isobars around Barra, so still some strong winds expected as we head into Wednesday. Our times of high water, Hastings there at midnight 31 and 12:54, and of course with those very, very big waves, you have got this risk of overtopping around our high tide times. And then as we push through the rest of the week, low pressure still dominating, but it is filling and weakening, so the winds gradually getting lighter and the showers becoming fewer. Take care.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
That does not look good, does it? Or
No.
very pleasant. Might stay in bed tomorrow. Now, in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
I'll have our late news tonight at 10:55. Please stay up late with me. For now, though, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks for watching. Take care. Stay warm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.